Hello everybody, welcome to another developer interview here on Jumpstart. I am MegapieMan, and today with me I have Jim Walls and Robert Lindsley from Jim Walls Reloaded. Today we're going to be talking about their up-and-coming game, Precinct. So why don't you two tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do at Jim Walls Reloaded.
You want me to go first?
It doesn't matter who goes first, whoever.
This is Jim Walls. I give you a little background. I served with the California Highway Patrol beginning 1971, and for 15 years I worked the streets until I got a disability retirement in 1986. Just shortly after that, I met Ken Williams, who owned the Sierra Online video producing, and they were doing like, King's Quest at the time. And he asked me if I thought I could write a story, about my experiences as a police officer. And then with his help, he had this idea of doing a police game. With his help, that we would get together and try this adventure game as how it is to be a police officer. So anyway, that's how Police Quest started out. And then, so for the next 17 years, we designed different games. And I retired in 1993. And last year I came back, and Robert and I, we formed Jim Walls Reloaded. And, due to the public funding that was available. And we thought maybe we could... the fans were getting a hold of me on Facebook, and they were trying to encourage me to come back to do another police-styled adventure game. So this is how Precinct came about, and that's where we are now.
Mm-hmm. So you've been making games for quite a while.
Yes, I started, summer of 1986 with Ken Williams and Sierra Online.
That's pretty cool. So, Robert, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do at Jim Walls Reloaded?
Yeah, sure. So I started out at actually Sierra Online in the 80s. I started there in 1987. So I've been in the video game business for about 25 years now. I started out as an engineer there and worked my way through the ranks, became a producer, and went to work at Microsoft. I worked on in the PC games group there as well as the Xbox group. Went to New York, worked at Atari, worked at a company called Mad Cats in San Diego. I ran their game division there. Also have worked at Harmonix, Lingo. At Harmonix I did Rock Band 3, Rock Band Green Day, a bunch of track packs. And since then I've been VP of various game companies and hooked up with Jim about 7 months ago and became president of Jim Walls Reloaded. My role on Precinct is actually as executive producer, so I'm managing kind of all the day-to-day stuff as far as production-related concerns, finding the developer, and Jim's really kind of maintaining the creative vision for that product while I handle kind of all the business stuff and the Kickstarter stuff and all that.
Mm-hmm. So what exactly is Precinct? You've mentioned, Jim, that it's somewhat like Police Quest, but what is it in itself?
Well, Precinct is going to be what we call the spiritual bringing back of Police Quest. And Precinct is, you're going to start, as a cadet in the academy when the gameplay starts. And you have 1 day left in the academy when you start playing the game. And, you're going to, during that period of time, you're going to learn the point and click and how that works. You're going to, do a dynamic shooting course and then handcuffing procedures. And from there, you graduate the academy. You're assigned to Central Precinct. And if you can think in terms of a large city like Detroit, Chicago, it's divided into 5 different precincts. And what we have in mind is to do 5 separate games, with the first game, being, all about the central precinct. And this central precinct, you're going to start off as an officer, uniformed officer on foot patrol. That's going to take you about 25% of the game. You'll be on a foot patrol before you are actually transferred into a traffic division. So the entire first game of Precinct is going to be, you know, all kind of aspects of a uniformed police officer, and it's going to be in the adventure mode. You know, it's going to be in the adventure game style. And there'll be a storyline with it. You're going to be kind of you know, when you're on duty, you're going to be guided by, you know, whatever's going on in front of you. Anyway, but there's going to be, you know, you're going to have time off too, so you can like walk around and explore a little bit. And, you know, there'll be a love interest. There'll be other things that you're doing that you can possibly develop if you want to. And there's a couple of street gangs that are operating within Central Precinct, and kind of the crux of the whole game is shutting those two gangs down.
So you've mentioned that it is definitely going to be a point-and-click adventure game. And point-and-click adventure games in the recent gaming industry haven't really been prevalent. We've seen a couple with games like Machinarium, which has done well, and recently Telltale's The Walking Dead, which has done well. Do you feel that a point-and-click adventure game is really going to be able to find a new audience? There's going to be the old audience who enjoyed games like Police Quest, who you've mentioned that have come to you on things like Facebook asking you guys to see if you would be interested in making another game like that. But do you feel that people who necessarily don't know what those games are really going to be able to get into Precinct with it being in a genre that you don't see a lot of anymore?
I believe so, but I think it's going to be, I think the whole draw of Precinct is going to be not necessarily the point-and-click interface, it's going to be the experience. Because what we want to bring is we want to bring an experience that when you play this game, you're going to, when you end the game, you're going to feel like, wow, I just played, I was a police officer through this game. That's what we want to bring.
Yeah, I really feel like what we're trying to do with the game is we're trying to modernize the genre in a lot of ways. So there are point-and-click adventure game aspects to it, but we want to make it so it appeals to more people. And I think Jim is right. Like, Police Quest was the very first sort of procedural cop game, and there's still definitely a market there for that. And while there may not be as huge of a market for kind of the point-and-click adventure games, I feel like the way we're doing it and the way we're developing it can actually appeal pretty broadly to both the adventure game, kind of hardcore adventure game fans, as well as modern gamers.
I'm definitely interested to see where the game goes, but why now do you feel like coming back and making the game? I did some looking up, some research on both of you, and from what I could see, Jim, you haven't really been working on a game since like 2002. Robert hasn't been since 2009, at least from what I found on the internet. What was the decision for all of you guys to come together now and start working on something?
Well, you know, I was happily retired, and you know, for what, 10 years. I retired in 2003, and I think it was the, you know, when the, you know, it was the crowdfunding thing that all of a sudden, you know, I start seeing Leisure Suit Larry, we start seeing the Space Quest guys, and, you know, Lori and Corey, and it just seemed like it was almost resurrection of Sierra Online all over again with the games. And then, like I said in the beginning, you know, you know, I still didn't have any plans, but then, you know, the fans found me and on Facebook, and they're just kind of, you know, just, Jim, come back, please come back and do another police procedural game. And that's kind of the way it got started. You know, I just thought about it for a while. And, you know, I talked back and forth with the fans, and then, I did a podcast with Chris Pope, and then Robert heard that and got a hold of me. So I mean, it just kind of built from there.
For me, when I left, I think I left Atari in 2009, and that's when I moved up to Harmonix and worked at Harmonix for a couple of years, working on Rock Band and Dance Central. And then after that, I started my own consulting company and had 2-3 clients at a time, and had been doing that for a couple of years. And actually, I was working with a client at the time, and I heard Jim's podcast. And I had seen the previous Sierra Adventure Kickstarters happen. And I'm really good friends with Scott and Mark and Chris Pope and Al and Paul and all those guys. And I had been thinking about the idea of getting back into the Sierra thing because it's been a long time, and there's just been so much interest with all the Kickstarters. And then that's when I heard Jim talking, and so I reached out to Jim, and I think, Jim, I actually got you on your website. That's how I got a hold of you, because Jim and I hadn't spoken in a few years. Mm-hmm. And that's just when the conversation started happening. Like, is this something we want to do, that we want to work on together? And Jim started telling me his ideas, and I got really excited about the idea of working with him and working on this project. So that's kind of what got me into this project specifically.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely see how that would bring the two of you together. Just having the idea out there starts getting your mind going with, what if we brought it back? If we did try to make something again, what could that be? Now, Jim, you mentioned about crowdsourcing. You guys did have a Kickstarter for a while, but unfortunately you decided to cancel it, but then decided to have your own crowdsourcing thing. What were some of the reasons behind bringing down the Kickstarter, and could you explain what the new crowdsourcing thing you guys have is?
Yeah, I think when we started our Kickstarter, we went to great lengths, spent a lot of time working on what are the rewards going to be and what's the video going to be. And, we all flew out to Oakhurst and met up and did a tour of the old Sierra buildings and all that. And we really wanted to get a sense on video for the Kickstarter, what was Precinct going to be, and kind of combine that with the history of Sierra and make almost like a mini documentary in a way for our Kickstarter video. Mm-hmm. And when we started, we actually did pretty well the first couple days, but then after the first few days, we started seeing funding drop off pretty significantly. And it seemed like people really wanted to see more. So the first couple days, we got a lot of Sierra fans, a lot of great support. And then these questions started coming up, like, well, what is the game going to be? And what is that balance of action going to be versus adventure? And what is the driving interface going to be like? And we started really we took a step back and we started thinking about really how can we best answer these questions for people? And I've been with many publishers. I've worked with many video game publishers, and I've seen plenty of write-ups on video game ideas and concepts. And one thing I've learned is that it's really almost impossible to visualize what a game is going to be based on a write-up. We had the art test that we put into the Kickstarter video, but then combining that with a write-up, we didn't feel like that would resonate necessarily with people. So seeing kind of that we weren't going to be successful with our Kickstarter without that really critical piece, we decided to build our own fundraising platform. And the difference between our fundraising platform and the Kickstarter platform really is that we wanted to give people the opportunity to provide staged funding. So we almost wanted to make it like really a publisher model, or really like a venture capital model, where people would get to a certain point. We would get to like $25,000, and then that would enable us to build a prototype that people could actually see and play and kind of give us their thoughts. And then if they liked that, then we would continue crowdfunding and get to the next level, where we would provide more gameplay and more engine technology. And we really thought that Kickstarter is a great platform, but it really didn't allow for what we needed to do with our project for the fans. We really wanted to keep in very close contact with the community. We really wanted to get their feedback and be able to give them builds and get their thoughts. But the core was we really needed to get to a prototype that we could build so that we could hand out to them. So we really felt like the best way to do that was by creating our own crowdsourcing platform, which is what you see today at precinctgame.com.
Mm-hmm. How much money are you looking to raise? Because I think from what I remember, the cash you're looking to raise now is a little bit less than what your Kickstarter was initially for.
Yeah, so our Kickstarter originally was $500,000. That included all of the Kickstarter fees and Amazon payment fees. That included the rewards. And really, at the end of the day, that was going to leave us with, you know, as far as development funds to work with, between like, you know, $350,000 and $360,000, like in that range, because the rewards are really, really expensive, and you know, all the fees and stuff like that. So, so what we wanted to do is we really wanted to break it down into sort of more bite-sized chunks. So our proof of concept is 25 grand, and that gives us the ability to provide like a 3 to 5 minute experience where you play a little bit of the game and you understand what the interface is going to be and how you interact with the world. And then from there, we go to 90 grand, which is a vertical slice, which is sort of a more in-depth version of that, where you have some more gameplay mechanics, there are more engine components coming online. And then we make a bigger leap to 250, which is really a full demo. And then the full game, we were planning at 400. And the good thing about the 400 is that actually gave us a little more working capital than the original Kickstarter would have given us. And the idea there is that once we build the engine, it's going to be really easy for us to generate content. And we really feel like content is what's going to make this game. And we felt like 400 was a great number for us to put together a lot of content that would make everybody really happy and kind of get this game to the next level.
It's definitely interesting to see a developer who is going the route of actually showing people what they're making as they're making it. It's something that I kind of look for these interviews, and I also do demo overviews for Kickstarter when I'm looking for projects. A lot of the things that I look for is, do they have a demo available? What are their screenshots? Do they have a video of in the game? So seeing that you guys are kind of focusing on showing off the game as you make it will definitely, I think, help continue to bring interest as the game develops. Now, having worked on a lot of projects yourselves, do you find that, I don't know how much of Precinct is finished at this point, but have you found that it's more difficult to work on a game nowadays? It's easier to work on a game nowadays? How has game development, or games in general, really changed over the years for you guys?
Well, for me, yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead.
Well, for me, it's sort of mixed. I mean, you know, I have a history of not only adventure games but big console games as well as mobile, and they're all really, really different markets. I think in terms of mobile, it's gotten a lot easier. You know, when mobile first started happening, you didn't have technology that you could rely on. And now you have great technology, you know, specifically the Unity engine, which we're using for Precinct. And that not only allows us at this point to work on mobile, but it allows us to go to console. It allows us to do a PC version, a Linux version, a Mac version, you know, really anywhere we want to go with Unity, we can. And there's certainly work that needs to be done for each platform. But overall, you know, that engine in particular has made development much less complicated and expensive. That said, I think that the audience expectations for products have gone up a lot, even over the past 10 years. So you're dealing with, you know, since Xbox 360 has come out, if you took an Xbox 360 launch title and released it now, I don't think there would be there would really be much reaction to it at all. I mean, of course, you know, the Halos of the world and all that, but just the expectations of the audience, the quality of the games has gone up tremendously over the life cycle of that console. And I think you're seeing expectations of users go up accordingly.
No, I was just going to say that for me, it's kind of exciting because it's with the technology that you know, is available today, like Robert just explained, you know, with the engine, Unity engine, you know, for the first time, I'm going to be able to actually visualize and make this driving interface that I've always wanted to do in all of the Police Quest games, and was, you know, never able to do it as, you know, I envisioned it. So that's a real exciting part for me.
Now, you both have mentioned that you are using the Unity engine, and this is an engine that I've heard a lot of people really liking to use nowadays and saying that it's easy to work with. What was the decision to go with Unity instead of going with something like Unreal or another free engine, even though it's a bit dated at this point, like the Source engine, or even, since you have experience in game development, creating your own engine?
I think a lot of it has to do with, it's really a couple of things. It's really cost. You know, going out and licensing, you know, the Unreal Engine or something like that would not only cost a lot of money to do, but developing in those environments is really expensive. You know, you want top tier asset creation, and you're really looking at those platforms or those engines to do, you know, 5, 10, 15, $20 million games. When I was at Atari, I worked on Ghostbusters, and that was using the Infernal engine, which is an absolutely terrific engine, but it is extremely high-end 3D engine. With Unity, the great thing about it is it's so flexible. So you can work within Unity to build games for console, but it also can scale tremendously to mobile. And I've always envisioned this game being not only on PCs, but on iPhones and Android devices, and you know, downloadable on Xbox Live. So I've really wanted to see it in a lot of different places. And Unreal definitely has its platform on you know, has its game engine on those platforms. But I just didn't feel like the flexibility was quite there as it was with Unity. So that was a really critical component to us deciding on Unity.
And another thing was that we could customize it, correct? I mean, we can put our own, you know, own plugins in.
Yeah, and the studio we're working with is a Unity shop, so they're actually going to be building a lot of technology on top of Unity. So, like I was saying earlier, we're going to basically be able to, you know, Jim and I could create content in the game if we wanted to. We could create missions. So the developer was actually is actually taking Unity and making it much more flexible for us to work within the environment.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I want to make sure I ask you guys is the main focus of Precinct. Now, you've talked about a couple different things. You've talked about, Jim, that you're finally going to be able to make that driving sequence that you wanted to be able to make, so we know that there's going to be driving in the game. And you've talked about that you want to keep it as a point-and-click adventure game, but you want to kind of modernize it a bit. We've seen stuff like this with Telltale's The Walking Dead. It's still a point-and-click adventure game, but it does have aspects of other games thrown in the mix. Is Precinct going to be more of sort of a puzzle-solving thing, a detective thing? How linear is it going to be?
Yeah, it's going to definitely be, you know, it's going to have... you know, seem linear, because I mean, you're playing the part, you know, as a police officer. So I mean, you have to, you know, as you take on an investigation, you know, you're going to have to find the, you know, the follow, you know, the chain of evidence, and so that in itself kind of makes it linear. Mm-hmm. But you're also going to have, you know, your times when you can explore around, you know, in your off time. And you know, I mean, it's going to be a mix of that.
Almost, but, you know, kind of like L.A. Noir's sort of open world feel, but you still have to keep to some guidelines.
Exactly.
Right. So, unfortunately, I have not played Police Quest, but I did look into it, and one thing that I definitely noticed about Police Quest was that in playing the game, you have to actually learn and figure out the different police procedures, and the game will actually punish you if you don't, such as one section in the beginning. I think it is you have to, in the first game, you actually have to check your car, or as soon as you go out on the street, you'll get a flat tire, something like that. Is Precinct going to be something like that? Is it going to be kind of a learning experience, or is it not going to be as in-depth as that or as punishing as that?
It's definitely not going to be as punishing. I mean, you're going to have to you will have to follow police procedures, and we're going to have I guess there's going to be a digital copy of the like a training manual of some sort that kind of gives you a guideline that you can read over. But that's part of the little gameplay in the beginning at the academy is to learn a little bit of that, as far as how the interface works. And but just for an example, like arresting someone, there's a normal arrest, there's like a high risk arrest, and there's like a felony arrest. And so I mean, in that light, I mean, if you know that you're going to arrest a known armed and dangerous felon, you would want to use the felony stop procedure. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you might find yourself in trouble. Right. But I mean, to get back to your original question, it's not going to be as if you don't walk around the car, you're gonna die because you get a flat tire and you crash and kill yourself.
Yeah, and I think that part of the modernizing the game is really making it more accessible. And you kind of look at the old Sierra adventure games, and they're terrific, and people really remember them fondly. But you go back and you play them, and you're like, wow, these were frustrating. And so what we want to do is we want to sort of relive the memory that people have of those old games without so much of the frustration.
Right. That's one thing that I definitely wanted to touch on, because I remember, I think it was maybe the first Leisure Suit Larry game that on the first screen you can automatically walk in the street and kill yourself within 5 seconds of starting the game. So... And Jim, you've mentioned that you're going to have a digital manual going along with it, and you're going to have a bit of a police academy. So, is the first episode going to be, since you decided to make this game more episodically instead of all as one package, is it going to be a bit more like tutorial heavy to prepare you for the other games, or are you going to have to try to learn some of this stuff yourself, either by picking it up in the academy or going through the digital manual?
Well, I think you're gonna pick it up, as you these are the digital manual is just a guideline. I mean, you can actually get through the game probably without having to use the digital manual. But you're gonna make mistakes, but you'll learn along the way. Mm-hmm. You're gonna have backup officers, you're gonna have partners, and which will help you, as well as the digital manual will.
Right.
Yeah, and I also want to clarify that the game is not an episodic game. It really is it's a full game, but it's a 5-game series. So much like Police Quest 1, Police Quest 2, Police Quest 3, that's what we're planning with Precinct. So it's not gonna necessarily be similar to Walking Dead in that way.
Right. Now, having that decision could be a little bit dangerous depending upon how well Precinct does when it comes out. What were some of the ideas to kind of go all out, say, okay, we want to make this a 5-game series instead of trying to see, we'll put one out and we'll see how it goes and then decide if we want to continue this idea later on, or maybe work on something else that's the same kind of idea but we'll put it under a different title?
Well, to begin with, with the high-level design document that I have now, originally, the entire game was going to take place over the entire city, all 5 precincts. Mm-hmm. Until we got to the point that, we started figuring out the numbers and everything, and it would be just absolutely, as far as going through a Kickstarter, almost impossible, to raise that amount of money to be able to do that. So then we kind of backed off and thought that we could make 5 separate games, and each one of them, you would start, like I said, at the central precinct, and then, if we get game 2 going, then you're going to be transferred to the north central precinct, or the northeast precinct. But you'll still have connections, with the central precinct at that time. So that's kind of the idea that we had.
Mm-hmm. Having worked in the industry for a while and having connections with other people that you've worked with, what was the big thing that made you guys decide to go with crowdsourcing instead of trying to find a publisher? Because I'm sure there would be at least a couple of publishers who would be interested with working with you, considering you worked with the original Sierra games that people like so much.
Well, for me, I think it's it's kind of control and hands-on. I mean, we'd be more in control of what we're doing, and that's the thing I liked about it.
Yeah, for me, I really felt like if we went to a publisher and we said, hey, we want to modernize the procedural police adventure game genre, and if you look at Police Quest and what we want to do is we want to take Police Quest and make it more of a 3D world but keep largely the same interactions as far as like how you adhere to procedure and things like that. I really felt like what a publisher would do is they would look at kind of comparative products. They would look at Police Quests. They would look at other big budget games that are out there, and they would kind of come up with a spreadsheet and decide whether or not they wanted to do the project, and then assign a producer to it, and then we'd be working with that producer, and then the publisher would have feedback, of course. And when Jim and I first got together and we started talking about this, because I've worked on the publisher side and on the developer side, as has Jim, we kind of said, we really don't want to go down that path. So since those are the people that went to Jim in the first place and said that they wanted this game, we thought it was really natural to go back to them and say, okay, great, let's put this up on Kickstarter and let's work with the community and let's make this happen.
So like I said before, I don't know how far you guys have gotten into a Precinct at this point, but do you have ideas for distribution platforms or pricing?
I would say that right now our focus is on PC, and depending on the scope of the game, we're looking at between $14.99 and $19.99. Mm-hmm. Part of our stretch goals is the idea that we would do a Linux version as well. So we would do the PC version as a base platform, followed up by a Linux platform. We're also seriously looking at mobile, iPad, Android tablets, and Android and iPhones.
Yeah, I remember you saying that you wanted to go into mobile. And do you have ideas for getting onto consoles as well? I know that a couple point-and-click adventure games have tried getting into the console market, and some of them don't really work super well on consoles. But have you thought about that with Precinct?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the key there is figuring out how to make it work effectively on console. If you're given just basically a choice of 4 options and you push the joystick up button or down based on what choice you want to make, I don't feel like that is necessarily a super compelling product. So what we would need to do is kind of take a step back and say, okay, how would we design this for consoles, and what would that interface be with the controllers, and how would people play this game? But we've definitely talked about it. I worked on the original Xbox, and I'm a huge fan of Microsoft, and I've worked with Sony plenty on PS2 and 3. And so I'm a huge fan of consoles and would love to figure out a way to get Precinct on. I just think it really comes down to, does it make sense and how can we make it work?
Uh-huh. Well, thank you both, Robert Lindsley and Jim Walls, for talking to me today about Precinct. Do you guys have a Facebook, Twitter that people can use to follow the game or yourselves respectively?
Yeah, you can reach out to us on Twitter at Precinct Game. You can reach us on the web at precinctgame.com. And we also have a Jim Walls page on Facebook, as well as a Police Quest fan group and the Sierra Chest, which is a sort of more general Sierra type Facebook page. But you can get a hold of us at any of those places.
All right, well, links to all that stuff will be in the description of the video. Thank you again, both of you, for joining me today. Do you have anything specific you would like to go over before we wrap it up?
Just visit fun.precinctgame.com, and if you like it, help us out.
The last thing I'd like to say is that you know, Jim has said this more eloquently than I, but if he were just meeting up with Ken Williams now and just thinking about Police Quest, this would be the game that he would want to make. So so I'm super excited to be working on it with him.
It's definitely something to keep in mind, and the game looks very interesting from what I've seen of screenshots and video footage, what limited bit there is. Thank you both again for joining me today on this Jumpstart developer interview. I have been MegapieMan, and I will talk to you guys later.
Take care.